Chair Root is absent and excused. Vice Chair Polianis,
Here.
Dr. Boothfellas,
Here.
Mrs. Jennings,
Here.
Mr. Kaskudis,
Here.
Mr. Seaman,
Here.
Mr. Terrapini.
Here.
Great. We have a long list of people from the public who want to speak. So we're going to skip that and let them speak later and go into our first guest, Chief Jeff Young.
Good afternoon, Jeff Young, Police Chief.
Jeff, basically what we're looking for is, and as long as you've been with the law enforcement and the chief, what can we do in the charter that could help your department?
I mean, we get a lot of support from the commission and the community overall and the charter as well. Trying to look through things, and I know I was talking with the fire chief before coming here. Y'all had asked about the residency requirement. As a police chief, I don't have a problem with it. I live in the city already, so, but I could see the complexities that come along with it, but also the value that comes with that position and against it. You could argue either way for it or against it. Today's time and period, it's a lot easier to manage from a distance. Our cell phones and stuff, all the communications, I could look up every call in progress and everything on my cell phone, doing all that information and coordinate from any distance I'm away from the department. So having a residency requirement, while I feel it is value for the police chief, fire chief, and the city manager, is an absolute necessity. No, I mean, Chief Cochin didn't live in the city, and he had a stellar 12-year career here. So I think that was just one example that I could point to for a residency requirement in the charter. But I do see the value in it because I feel like being part of the community and being out there, you need to be out there. But just because you live here doesn't mean that you'll always be out in the community either. So it's 6 one, half a dozen another, I guess, for that type of a question. Yes, sir.
So one of the things that we discussed was, like take Cochin, for example, as he was grandfathered in because he was promoted at the time when that.
Within, yeah.
Within. And to the extent that happens, you promote from within and somebody lives outside the city limits, what would you, in your opinion, say a reasonable time frame or mileage? We looked at a radius of so many miles that we would look at as to require somebody to live within a striking distance of the city.
Yeah, that's a tough one too. I mean, you could live 20 miles south is far different than 25 miles just east or north. So, getting here during rush hour traffic from St. Pete's going to be a lot more difficult.
Yeah, y'all have bells and whistles on your vehicles. So
Yeah, we'll get where we need to go. If I'm responding with my patrol vehicle, yes, absolutely. But, again, there's no guarantee. I may be even home today or, this weekend I might be out of town. My wife and I were in Orlando with her car this past weekend at a friend's retirement party. But if I needed to get here, I'll get here. And the communications, and keeping in touch with my other command staff, and they're all in close proximity as well. And, there is other factors that come about it. And, you're talking about when Chief Cochin did get promoted from within, if you have that kind of a restriction on it, it could limit the people that put in for it, even internally, because, some people are going to want to stay where they can live because their spouse or significant other may have a job that requires them to be close to their place of business as well. So it could be a financial impact for somebody moving into the city where, the price of a house here in Tarpon, especially with the insurance, is going to be far greater than if you're living east of Trinity, where the insurance impact is not as great. We don't offset any of that with any type of cost, coming from the city as far as, hey, a moving cost. All right, my God, is the city going to pay for that move? We don't do that. So, incentivizing it, maybe incentivizing something in the city, if you do decide, to move in here, we'll pay for the move or assist with the move. Something of that nature might entice some, because I can tell you I have great internal candidates right now for, that are directly under me, none of the three of them live in the city. You know, so if they were going to be looking when I retire anywhere down the road to put in for it, that's going to be a consideration for them because, you know, there's no guarantee that you know, when you say grandfathered in, I believe Chief Cochin actually had to get an exemption from it, from the Board of Commission, you know, through the city manager. And city manager brought that forward and gave him an exemption, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but this is our opportunity to make.
And that's what I'm saying, that if you're looking at what changes could be made in the charter, you know, I can see the argument for either side. You know, having grown up most of my life in Tarpon and, you know, I already know I'm vested in here, but do I think Chief Cochin was as vested? Yes. You know, so I don't think living here is the hallmark of being vested. It's what's in your heart, you know, and I think that's the toughest part of measuring somebody that comes in for any job interview, whether it's the police chief or public works or public services director. You know, I know a few of them don't live in the city, but their hearts are in the city 100% because they came here and they work here, and that's what they're going to do as professionals. So I think you'll have that part of it. But again, you know, to argue one way or the other, you know, I know most citizens probably like seeing people walking around. I know I get approached, you know, in the grocery store or wherever I'm at, and probably spend an extra hour in there just because people are stopping to talk to me, but I love it, so I don't mind it at all.
One thing we talked about as a possibility for some of this, particularly for the employees that would be moving up to a higher level job that required residency, was possibly exempting those employees in that situation, with the exception of if they did decide to move, they had to move into the city.
I think that's a very reasonable way of doing it, absolutely. I think that would be a great answer to it. And if somebody's moving from out of state, I would prefer to see them move here as opposed to anywhere else. But again, it could come down to financial impact because, you know, the housing market in Tarpon, you know, as we all know, is high. So, you know, are you going to be paying or subsidizing at a scale that still makes it attractive to an outside candidate, whether it's my position or others? Because, you know, in the grand scheme of things, that's going to come down what's going to attract the better candidates for you. And that could be a factor that, you know, if it comes down to dollars and they have to live here, they could be sitting there saying, well, it's not cost efficient for me to have to move from, you know, wherever into the city. So even with an external candidate, it could still limit who you're bringing in for even just for an interview.
Well, Chief, given that you're right, that the market's a little tight, so, and I think everybody recognizes that. So in order to create some flexibility, what kind of mileage distance? I mean, 5 miles, 7 miles?
You know,
10 miles? I mean, and you're just,
Again, that's a tough one depending on where, but I would probably do, you know, if you're looking at it, you know, how long does it take you to get to the city on a normal day-to-day travel? You know, within 20, 30 minutes, that's pretty reasonable. And to Mr. Kaskudis's point, if it's an emergency and we all have patrol cars, or mine's an unmarked car, my command staff's unmarked, we have lights and sirens though in them, we'll get here
yeah.
quick.
The trouble is we're not just talking about the police department.
Yeah,
so-
exactly. It's the public works directors or public services director. But
would you think
again, you know, where do you draw the line on that? I don't know, you know, is it just going to be those that have the propensity for emergency situations, or like a public works or public services, or, you know, the library director and other ones? You're not going to have that need there. So where do you differentiate, and how are you treating one department head different than another? You know, and drawing that line. And now I say, this one needs to, but this one doesn't. This one needs to, this one doesn't. I think that's the hardest part to answer in a charter.
Well, there was two things we were looking at. One was the emergency type people like you and the fire department and the public works director, public services, of course, the city manager. And really, Mr. Salzman should be there to make legal decisions. And he's sleeping over here.
I'm looking at what's open in our,
And the other part, Jeff, was what you were talking about as far as the fabric of the community type thing, like the planning director and maybe the library, I don't know, but, I mean, you get around, so to give the flexibility, would 5 miles be enough, or 10 miles?
I mean, you know,
10 miles is probably a 20-minute drive.
yeah, 10 miles. I mean, I would do it like if you're within a 20-minute time period of getting here, 20 to 30 minutes would be reasonable expectation for
Trouble is, I
somebody.
think we need to make it a distance instead of a time, just
yeah.
because,
Yeah,
you
distance
have
from the
to-
Senate, from City Hall, yeah.
yeah, City Hall or Tarpon and Pinellas, somewhere in the middle of town.
I mean, I could see the value in all of those things, but, you know, again, you're limiting the opportunities for people to come here, they could still do their job, without a doubt. But to sit there and say you have to live in the city, because there's a lot of enclaves within the city that are not even city of Tarpon Springs. So, you know, I could live out in Rolling Oaks, right off Curlew, but that's county jurisdiction. So I'm not in this, I'm within the confines of the city. I can get here quicker from there than I can from 20 miles away, but is it still, you know, or someplace in town where you actually live, you
Or
know?
for Point Alexis.
Forest, right. If I could live in Forest Ridge and get here quicker than from out west, you know, in Harbor Watch area and out that far. So, you know, time periods and distance isn't always that. You know, given a radius, like you were saying, of 10, 15 miles, probably 15, 20 miles, I would think would be reasonable. Sure.
Okay.
What other, as far as a police chief, other departments are under your umbrella, like code enforcement?
Code enforcement's
What,
under me
other
as
than
well.
code enforcement, what other departments are under your umbrella?
Well, I mean, we have our Cops and Kids Youth Center. We have a working relationship, a partnership with the Tarpon Springs Housing Authority on running the youth center daily. SROs fall under me, which is school resource officers, but everything is police-related. Outside of that, it would be code enforcement.
I don't have my binder, so I don't know if code enforcement is a section within our binder.
Not for a
I don't
requirement
know.
of living in the city or anything, no.
No, not living in the city. I'm talking about any charter provisions.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, so then that was a question I did need to ask you. So,
Appreciate it.
Where are you? Currently, the charter's pretty straight and dry. And I understand what everybody's saying. I don't have a good feel for who has to live here.
I know I do, but again, I lived here when I started and plan on living here when I'm
Well,
retired, so.
In the past, it was a lot of people, and I think everybody realizes now that's not really necessary, but
If you're asking me who I think, if you're going to say who needs to live in the city, I don't think you should have a strict residency requirement. It's not needed today in today's society. But if you're going to, definitely the police chief and fire chief and the city manager would be the three that I would say. But outside of that, but even those three, I get 100% why the city manager and the police chief and the fire chief people from the outside, the residents would want to see them living in the city. It's, the perception is that they have a vested interest in the city and would be driving around, being there all day long and everything. That doesn't mean that whoever's in that position would be spending time walking around, dining or shopping or going out. There is no requirement for anybody that has a residency requirement to do that. But again, that's going to be the juggling act of anything.
well, would it work if, like you live in the city right now and you have your up close subordinates that could take your place when the time came.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that once they're there, we don't want to lose that talent.
Correct.
They could stay where they're at, but if in the future they move to come into the city.
I think Mr. Seaman, the example that he gave was perfect. If you're outside the city, you're living there, and you're working here currently, we won't require you to move in. However, if you do decide to move, it would have to be within the city. I think that's reasonable.
Sure.
And for an incoming person, like a city manager,
You know, again, that's for something that I think that even as a resident or looking at it from that perspective, I could understand you wanting, if they're moving down here from up north or something, that they would be required to live here. But if they're coming from internally again, you know, the same type of principle would apply.
Okay, I appreciate that. You can't leave, though. You got this done in 15 minutes. We saved an hour for you.
Hey, I could talk about a lot more things. Any questions you have, then fire away.
You hear what happened to Keith?
Yeah, it's, as I said, you know, I went up to the hospital and stopped out with Romano and them, so, yeah. Medical issues, yeah. Sad.
Well, can you let me in?
Absolutely. Everything good? All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming, Jeff, we really do.
Back in a little bit.
Thanks,
Thanks
Jeff.
for all your
Thank you.
volunteerism as well, and trying to make the city better. Appreciate it.
Trying.
Oh, yeah.
That's right, all the volunteers out there in the
You
city.
forgot you had it? You're next, yes.
Do the minutes first.
Well, it'd probably be a good idea.
Jim, I was just saying, we all have to be residents.
That's true.
We do need to do something that I jumped right over, and that's approval of the minutes from June the 17th.
Move for approval.
We have a motion.
Second?
And a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Bucavalas?
Yes.
Mrs. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Chair Corianis?
Yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. Just because it's in writing, you can't count on it, you know?
Jimmy, should we talk about the chief's thing a little bit, the residency, or you want to just keep going to Irene, or?
Oh, I would love to keep up with the residency right now. It's one of the most important things we've got to figure, and jumping around and coming back and coming back. Yeah. If nobody objects to that, let's
No, I
jump
think
into
it's a
that
good
and see
idea
what
while
we
it's
can
fresh,
live with
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well-
You know, I thought he made a very good point with the time access, you know, rather than a distance access, you know, for us to consider.
But you can't judge time, Joan, because to the south it's different, so you
It
gotta.
changes.
Yeah,
Right.
you have to use a distance, I think. I mean, and you
I
just
think
use
you'd be
your
in
best,
trouble with time.
just have to
Yeah.
use your best guess of, okay, 7 miles, 10 miles, that gets you in the drive time that you're looking for, but, I mean, I think it's already in there that there's an exemption for existing employees, isn't there, Merle? In the charter already on residency?
I think that they could be granted an exemption.
Yeah, I think it's something they have to, the board may temporarily excuse the residency requirement for such time periods, no period to exceed 1 year.
That's on a new employee though, right? Isn't there an exemption for,
That's,
It says March 14th of 2000.
yeah, that's
Of
really for
2000?
somebody who came in and, the first year they didn't find a place to live
Yeah.
and the board gave
new
them
hire?
a.
Well, I would support Merle's idea that if you're an existing employee and you get a chance for a promotion, that you don't have to move. I mean, I would support that.
That makes sense, and
Yeah.
what no one has really mentioned is the issue also, if you have children.
Right.
Let's say your kids are a junior or senior in high school, are you gonna wanna move into a
Well,
different?
that's part of the
School
justification
district?
for granting.
So would we say that, like, if you choose to sell your house and move, at that point you must move into the city,
Or into the,
into the 12-mile radius.
whatever it is, 10 miles, 7 miles, whatever it's decided on.
So you're saying there's no requirement, so are you saying still a requirement
No.
for some people? Like
No, I'm saying if, let's just say that some guy works and he's in, I don't know, Dunedin, and he
Okay.
gets a chance for a promotion to that he wouldn't have to move to Tarpon. If he's an existing employee, he's exempt from the residency requirement.
Okay.
I think that's about the plainest way to say it.
But I think at least the certain key ones that if they're moving,
Oh, yeah.
would have to move to the city, not the radius, would be the city manager, the fire, police,
And planning.
and
Oh, the public works.
public works, I think was what we said.
Public services,
Yeah.
public works, and, I
And
mean, I'm
then,
big on the planning thing.
then everybody else would be the radius thing.
Yeah.
Are you going to require them to be in the city, or are you going to require them to be with a city address? Because we talked about there are some
Right, that's-
areas that are
City
really
address,
city,
actually, yeah.
right? But they're technically part of the county.
Design plays, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're putting them in the catch-two phase, but I think we can work that out. If it's a city manager coming from out of town, then we expect and demand that he live in town, okay? I mean,
Yeah.
for another state or what have you.
Yeah, no, I
he
guess
has
I'm trying to
no
find
way
out the
out of it.
definition of in town. Is an enclave with the Tarpon Springs address in town?
An enclave, has our city limits
I can tell you
go
how to
with
do
it, yeah.
Okay, I can tell you how to do it. Andy, remember when, before Forward Pinellas, it used to be Pinellas Planning Council?
Mhm.
And the county had a referendum, and they created planning areas for all communities, and so the county knew what they would have as unincorporated.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. So the city has a planning area. Okay, our planning area is everything north of Klosterman Road to the county line, and east, I think, to McMullen Booth, I think.
I think that's right.
Yeah, it's all the way down.
Yeah, it's way down.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, that's the one way to do it.
Then south to Palm Harbor.
No, our planning area doesn't go to Palm Harbor.
It stops at
It stops at Klosterman.
Klosterman.
Yeah.
And that's good. I don't have a problem with
I'm
that.
saying for the people that Merle was saying, police chief, fire chief, city manager, planning director, public services, public works director.
Because some of those areas are least expensive or less expensive than being in part of the city.
And
Well,
they,
the
they're,
stuff down around, like, even right south of the golf course, there's like 10 or 12 acres that are in the county. There's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's the
Oh,
problem.
yeah.
Klosterman, at the end of Florida Avenue is Coquina Shores or something?
Yeah.
That's in the county, but it's really in the city. I mean,
it's, well, yeah, and it's perceived by probably 95% of the residents as part of the city also. So, I mean, it should be fine for those people to live in that area, I would think. And the planning area is a good way to define it.
Right, and I had it in my notes that Andy also suggested zip code 34688 and 34689.
The trouble of that, Joan, is it, and Andy, is makes you subject to the feds, because they change zip codes.
true.
Sizes
It's-
based upon population growth.
Yeah, that's
They'll
true.
also discuss the unincorporated Tarpon Springs. So if they have a Tarpon Springs address, because that would be in the unincorporated area.
Well, the planning area would cover that, right? Rita?
Yeah, because that's where I was for 13 years.
I
The
think.
planning area captures all of the unincorporated enclaves in the city,
Okay,
right?
I have those down.
Is that right?
I believe so. We'll double check it.
I think what we're talking about is the answer. I think we can piece this all together and have a whole lot better charter piece than we had in the past, because times have
Yeah.
changed. And
Why
it's
don't we try and make at least, so we got the city manager, the police chief, fire chief, public works, we get that part, public works. And there's something called public services that runs
Right,
the
that's what's in the,
water and sewer and all
There's-
that stuff,
There's,
roads and streets, yeah.
Okay, so
And
so let's stop.
Wait,
Let's
now,
stop. Wait
I
a
gotta
minute.
make my argument for the planning director. Because the planning director who's planning the town, in my opinion, should be part of the fabric of the community. I mean, we have a historic district, we have a Greek cultural district, we have waterfront districts, we have all this stuff. I think somebody who's planning a town gets a better feel for the town by living in the town.
Yeah, well, the wording in the charter is the city manager, assistant city manager, city clerk. We deleted administrative services director. We've got fire chief, police chief, public services director, building director, and planning and zoning director.
Okay. I don't know about, I'd rather have the public works director than the building director. Yes? No, Jim?
It's in there. Public Services Director is in
They're
there.
two different positions, right, Irene?
That's correct. There's public services, which is water, and there's public works, which is roads and streets.
Yeah, my real thoughts on that is that the Public Services guy and the other guy out and doing those jobs could fall into the 12-mile area and not hurt us.
Oh.
Yeah.
Versus the planning area, you mean? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so we're
only
talking about
put
just
those
the planning
people.
area right now. Is that what you want to talk about? Just the planning area? Who's going to be in the planning area?
Yeah, let's start with that.
Okay, so the planning area is, Joan, you had the city manager, assistant city manager, police, fire,
City clerk,
city clerk.
yeah.
What do we care where she lives?
Well, I'm just telling you what's in the charter right now, okay?
She lives in her office down.
Right, yeah, she,
I think that's right.
okay, fire chief, police chief, public services director, building director, and planning and zoning director.
We crossed out, excuse me, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. While somebody was talking, I crossed out that the city clerk, administrative services director, developmental services director, and the planning and zoning director, we took out. But
Y'all had listed down the emergency support, which was the city manager, assistant city manager, fire chief, police chief, and then y'all were still going back and forth with the public services director and the public works director. I'm twisted.
I think if those people are in the radius,
yeah, if they're in the radius, they
Yeah.
ought to be
I'm
fine.
good with that.
Yeah, but
we want to limit this as kind of as little as we
Yeah, I don't think-
can on the true absolute residency.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think the city clerk matters, or the building director, or the,
I agree with you, John.
yeah, no.
It's,
So what was the other one? There was
I
one,
mean, we could let Irene leave her office?
yep.
Okay, so we're
So-
gonna delete city clerk, right?
Yeah.
let's, would you write this down for us? Thank you. We want to keep the city manager in it
Assistant city manager.
and the assistant city manager,
Right.
fire chief, police chief. And now we're saying planning and zoning director.
I
No,
mean, I
public
would like to,
services
but.
director.
Well,
That's
the
water.
public services director, we were saying could be in the radius. We're talking about just in the,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I mean, that's just me. You guys can weigh in.
I think everyone except the four, can be within the radius. The manager, assistant city manager, police chief, fire chief, and then the rest in the radius.
So we're saying there'd be 4 in the city limits, or the,
Yeah,
in
residency,
the 4 in the planning area,
right.
and the rest in the radius.
I mean, it doesn't mean they won't live in
No,
the city.
yeah, it
but-
doesn't prevent them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good P and Z director probably is going to want to live in the city.
You would think.
Yeah, and probably some of the others would too, but as far as a requirement, and then either of those groups at the different levels have the, if somebody's promoted to that position, they don't have to move.
Right, they're going to
unless they
fall under
choose to
the
move.
other
But
rules
if they
we've
do
been
move,
talking
then
about.
They have to move,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So I think in the third line, though, we're gonna have to specify city, because right now, within the city, and you want to change that to the city planning area?
Well, I think it, It does what you guys said, like,
Right.
when you say the city and somebody lives on the end of Florida Avenue and it's unincorporated, technically they're not meeting the requirement. But if you say the planning area, it
Right,
captures
so
it.
I'm
You're
just
right,
looking,
you're right.
yeah, so we want to change that wording in the third
It's
line
a city planning area.
area, right, okay.
I think that's a good safe for us as well, in the long run.
And it's defined already.
Yes.
There is a physical boundary to
And
it.
if it changes,
It changes.
then it changes, but it doesn't stop
not-
us from
it's-
doing what we're doing.
It's probably not going to change because the county's not going to want to give up any more land.
No, and there's nowhere to go in most directions,
Yeah.
too.
Irene, do you think you could ask Renee to give us a map of the city's planning area?
I pulled up the election map to I don't think you were here the day, but that shows it's color coded, and it shows what's in and what's out of the city limits. Like you said, at
Yeah,
the end
but
of Florida
that's-
Avenue and,
That's different than the planning map. It's the planning area that all the cities in the county agreed on. There was a public referendum on it, and
okay, I will get it from her and forward it to you. It's
Thanks.
different.
Okay, let's go forward now. We took care of the most important four and all of that, but let's talk about
the radius.
people who are coming up in position. And we need to include that language in this same thing, that, if Jeff leaves, the chief leaves, and he's got two guys who don't live in the city, how do we handle that?
I think we
We
use
talk-
Merle's thing of they don't have to move unless they
Unless
do
they
move.
move,
Move
then
in.
it'll be in Tarpon.
Has to be
So
into
that
the city.
language we need in there, that's what I was talking about. We need that to go just as strong as this is.
Right.
There was one other thing. What we were talking about. I'm gonna rely on y'all's memory too. I'm the oldest guy in the room here, so
Probably not
my
by much.
my retention is not that long. And Linda wouldn't come, so.
How old are you?
80.
Okay, I'm close.
Come closer, will you?
That's the gym I know.
I think we also discussed the language that Mr. Seaman just said. It was in the minutes of about if someone, let's see how it is here. Sorry, just jumped out of it. If someone is promoted, y'all talked about that language.
That they could stay.
Irene, could you pull it up?
Right, they can, unless they move.
Yeah, they can stay where they're at, but if they move, then they've got to come into the city.
I'll read what I have in the minute. I can just tell you real quick. I don't have it on that number. If current personnel get promoted, it's not the exact, what you voted on, but y'all spoke about it at the 17th, and then y'all voted on the 24th. If current personnel gets promoted to one of those main four positions, they would be grandfathered in. However, if one of the exempt parties elects to move their residency, then the exemption would be forfeited.
That works.
That works, yeah.
Yeah.
That works. That takes care of the new people coming in, the people who are here and get promoted, and when they come in. What else is there we should try to get in here? I don't want to leave anything out, because this is one of the most important
The
things.
distance, Jim.
Well, do you, the next sentence, do you want to leave that in about employed prior to March 14th, 2000? That's 24 years ago.
Yeah, it's got to change, the date definitely has to change, because we're changing the rules.
Okay.
And at this point, I'm not sure that even needs to be in there, because
Yeah, I'm not
we're
sure
being
it
very
does.
specific about who has to do what.
I think the new wording that Irene read kind of preempts it.
Takes preempts it, yeah. What about distance?
Yeah.
Well, didn't we specify that in line 3, within the city planning area?
Well, that's,
No.
That's
That's
for the
that's
four
just for the
guys,
four
that's just
Oh,
the
that's
top
for four.
executives.
Okay,
And then, so.
so we're going to go to a different geographic area for the other employees?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what we
10
talked
10
about, miles,
from-
instead of
Ten-
time,
Yeah,
miles.
10 miles from where?
From City Hall.
City Hall works.
So,
And then you
and-
have to define if it's directors or all employees.
That's just the others that are spelled out would, and any others that we might think need to be added, I guess. And I know some of these names aren't even right on the old thing, so we may need a little help knowing exactly who it is.
Yeah, I have a note to check the correct titles.
yeah, so Public Works, Public Services,
That's in the,
We have a copy of that. They gave us a copy of all the employees and how they
Oh, the
report.
organizational chart.
if we just came up with the distance, right, 10 miles, Merle?
I think 10's gonna equate to 20 minutes roughly, so.
Yeah, I'm good with 10.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about 10 miles from 10 miles from City Hall?
yeah, that's
Yeah, that makes sense.
reasonable.
I mean, it's a lot bigger than what it was.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, there's plenty of less expensive options
right,
within that range.
right, for a finite group of heads needed for emergency operations, and not for everybody necessarily.
Correct.
Right.
You getting all that, Irene?
We'll get it.
Mr. Salzman?
I'm relying on the tape
Oh,
for
okay.
all that language.
Let's go to the
Okay.
videotape.
Yeah.
So you could put us something together then, and that we can vote on.
Yeah, I was just looking at one of the other sections that's up for discussion when you get to it, one of the other big ones.
Which one is that? Because we're just about done with this anyway.
Well, powers of the boards,
What?
number, section 12, zoning powers.
Okay, before we go there, everybody pretty comfortable from what we've done and decided on, and we're gonna get
Yeah, we just have to
Mr.
decide.
Salzman will bring us something back in writing, and then we can fine tune that and be done.
Yeah, we just
we
haven't
need a
really
motion to that
defined
effect, or-
who those people are within the 10-mile limit, exactly.
I would
have we?
say at least all department heads, other than the 4 that we identified for the.
Directors and.
All
and-
department heads?
Do we,
I would think so.
you said 4, Merle, was there, are we leaving the planning director in the, with the 4?
I have it taken out.
City manager, assistant
Yeah,
city
okay.
manager, fire chief, police chief.
I never get my way.
How many department, I don't have the organizational chart.
Yeah,
I would have to go back and look. I don't
Yeah.
know offhand.
I didn't bring my copy, I should
There's more
have.
than
Yeah.
what's listed. That's why I said we either have to
Yeah.
clarify it or like who y'all want, or just say all other directors or department heads.
So, cultural services needs to be within 10 miles?
I kind of think you want all of those people to be close enough to participate in the community, even though they don't live in it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know-
with Merle, all the directors or department heads, and they play semantics sometimes with the language, so department heads or directors, either way. Right?
Yeah, I think so.
You can peek at mine.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can put something together for you to vote on. This is the other section I was telling you about, that I just wrote up. It's relatively simple. Assistant city manager.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Looks good. Andy, my one question would be that he would assume that responsibility without further, like it doesn't take any board action or anything. Once the assistant city manager becomes a city manager, if the city manager is absent.
Right. Well, that's
Without-
just even,
without-
well, remember, we have the acting city manager provision already in your language, and what I wanted to do is incorporate this into that. So
Okay,
that-
let me interrupt. I gave you guys that list of
Yeah.
directions and stuff, but are you happy with that? I don't want to get away from this one and start another one.
That's pretty stringent, you know, I mean, 10 miles, and some of these positions, like finance, IT, I mean, I just don't see the necessity of putting a limit. It doesn't mean, again, that they won't live here, but, you know, I can see the argument for development services, planning and zoning, economic development, but I just don't see it's a necessity for everybody.
Well, they're all under the umbrella of administrative services. So if somebody's just an administrator, do they have to be within,
But
you know?
but that's the planning and zoning, and,
Any other
You gotta
thing?
remember, though, this is for new hires, Tina. This isn't saying that somebody who works here today has got to move in. There'll be a date in there, they'll be exempt, whatever the date is, the voters, they're exempt from. If they live somewhere else now, they don't have to move in. So it'd be new hires to encourage, some of it's to encourage the participation in the government and to get the feel for the town and be part of the town.
right, which is important,
Right,
but,
so we're not talking about we're not talking about existing employees.
no, but let's say you hire an IT person who's coming from Largo, and their kids are in school there. Their husband works in St. Pete or something, you know.
Well, they don't have to move.
Okay, they don't have to move.
No, but if they do move in
Yeah,
the
only
future,
if they do
then
move.
they have
That
to.
applies to them.
Yeah.
That clause applies to them, too. Okay.
We have to
To
keep,
everybody.
we have to keep in mind also this EOC group that the city manager set up in an emergency. He's got, and I'm gonna guess there's 25 people.
They're gonna winnow that down, though. They said, that's what the fire chief said, that they
Yeah,
were gonna eliminate a bunch of those people.
Yeah.
Okay, but I don't, are they gonna do away with this whole process of having emergency people stand by? And
I don't know.
No,
I don't think they will either.
No,
and-
they're not, I wouldn't think they'll change that.
I think what the
It's just
chief
for
said
this-
was for that
The support.
hardened shell, wherever they all go, they didn't have room for them all.
But I-
Okay. Now, I'm just saying that the essential staff is everybody we've been talking about.
Exactly, that's,
It's got the manager, fire chief, deputy fire chief, 2, cord, floodplain administrator, police chief with 3 police, deputy police chiefs, information technology, economic development director, building official director, public works director, finance director, procurement, planning and zoning, projects, administration,
That's a
and,
different, thing than,
Directors.
that's different than what's in the charter.
okay, I know, and
So I don't think we need to worry about that as far as this
the only thing I
residency.
worry about is we can't give one of these people new rules by putting them in the charter.
I don't wanna put them in.
So you're only talking about the people that are currently in the charter?
I think you should really be specific here. Who you want in the residency requirement and where you're putting that residency requirement. Because remember how the question will come out, you know, on a referendum. It's basically, are you willing to allow these people within whatever you decide? Maybe it's the ones where you just say within, a Tarpon Springs address for our discussion, period. Because these are the essential people. Everybody else really is up to how the city wants to deal with that when they hire the person. I mean, you're dealing with the charter. The charter should only deal with the essential people that you want to live within the city.
Right. Merle had the language, Jimmy, I think. That list you were reading, Merle.
Yeah, we had,
On the existing charter.
well, the critical ones that were in the planning area was just the city manager, assistant city manager, fire chief, and police chief.
So we get
Then,
that.
then all the others, whatever they may be, would fall into the next.
But I'm saying to you that I don't think you're going to win on both those questions. I think you should have limited to one. The one you just said, those people have to be within the planning area. Period. The other ones should be more of a suggestion to the Board of Commissioners that these people should be required to live within 10 miles.
It's already in there.
I understand, but you're dividing up. With this new one, you're kind of justifying a few people to be within this area and others. I just think that the question's gonna be confusing. I'll write whatever you want. I just don't want it to be confusing for people.
Yeah.
When you're changing more than one
Well,
area of a
we-
charter section.
Honestly, Andy, our hands are tied because everybody knows that the market here is a little tight. All the department heads that came in and talked to us said, please expand it a little bit. So we just have to be careful how we do it. But I think we've wintered it down to there's 4 people in the planning area.
Right.
And then who are the people currently named in the charter, Merle? Just department heads or
No.
or directors? or
It's more
something?
specific than that.
Yeah, it's got the others, or the city clerk, the administrative services, which I guess doesn't exist, you could call public works, I guess, the public services director, building services director, planning and zoning director are the ones, the other ones that are spelled out now.
And then we just say that they have to live within a 10-mile radius of the city, outside the city.
Right, or if they move, okay,
And
absolutely, or if they move, they have to move within that.
And if they, well, Merle's language is, and if they're existing employees, they don't have to do anything. But if they move, then they have to move into that circle.
But
Yeah.
if they're new hires,
They have to move in.
unless somebody exempted it, or we built a option to exempt that, or give them a year to move or something.
No, there's
But-
language in there to that, right?
Yeah.
There is language in there.
Yeah, true, so.
I'll write whatever you want.
I think,
It's
I think
just.
our hands are tied on it.
Well, see, it's not if you, I know you may not like this, if you strike everybody except for the essential people under the residency, and you put your limitation of within the, the planning, the Tarpon Springs planning zone area, I'm just trying to figure out how to do the question.
Well, and I mean, part of the reason for it is, and you know this case better than any of us do probably, was having a building director who lived in Jacksonville, and we don't want that to ever happen again.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah. So,
Well, honestly, so I'll say this in response to that. The only way those things can be controlled is the Board of Commissioners controlling the city manager. This issue comes up all the time because of the provisions that talk about interference with the city manager and the city manager's ability to hire and fire people. And people always say, well, how do we get the city manager to do what we want? And the answer is, you fire the city manager.
Yeah.
Because the city manager answers to the Board of Commissioners. And you don't want to have the interference with how they're doing their job. But on the same token, if something like that comes up and the Board of Commissioners go, look, that's not acceptable to us. So either you have somebody within Pinellas County, let's just say, or, we're not going to keep you here. I mean, ultimately, that's the way you deal with those things. It's just legislating this the way you want to. I understand why you want to do it the way you want to do it. We're just going to have to work hard on getting the question.
I would be in favor of try wordsmithing it.
Yeah,
And as you understand, we
Yeah, no, I
want,
understand what you
and
want.
bring it back to
Yeah.
us and we'll
I
look
think
at it.
everybody's happy with that, and it sounds, to us, it sounds like we're covering all the
It
angles.
sounds easy for you guys. It's explaining that to the voters.
You got 3 years to do it. If you can't do it in 3 years, we're gonna bring someone else in. You guys haven't figured out, I'm a chairman, but I enjoy having fun when I'm a chairman. We don't need
Oh,
to
I
kill each other.
understand. I don't
over there.
have a problem.
Andy, I hear you, but I don't think we have any choice.
No, I understand. I got you. All
I agree with that. Ladies, okay with the way we,
right, so we'll bring you
let's see
back
what
some
What you
language.
come up with.
Yeah.
thank you, appreciate that. And now we'll deal with the charter revision, assistant city manager.
So, John, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I was thinking about how to put that verbiage in there. And I'm not sure I know what verbiage could you put in there that establishes when the person, it's almost like if you're the city manager and I'm the assistant city manager and you leave the city, then I'm the acting city manager,
Right.
automatic. Anytime you leave the city.
Right.
But that's not what it says.
Well, it says that the duties of the assistant, but shall include the exercise of the power and performance duties during the city manager's absence from the city.
The duties of the assistant city manager shall be assigned by the city manager, but shall include the exercise of the powers permitted to the city manager and city managers. Assistant city manager.
I guess so.
And I think that covers
asking
that.
for a new-
I have a
I
different,
think the assistant city
Yeah,
manager
it
shall
might have been
serve
when you were,
the assistant city manager
Because there's the acting city manager
No.
there.
you know, that would,
The duties of the assistant manager shall be
Yeah,
assigned by the city
automatic
manager,
without
but
further-
shall include the exercise of the powers and performance duties of the city manager during the city manager's absence from the city.
I think that covers it,
I
covers
mean,
it
that's pretty much
also, yeah.
anytime the city manager's gone,
The
that person
exercise
becomes
of-
the city manager.
Exercise of powers tells us that when the city manager's gone, he's doing them.
Right.
I have a question about the selection method, though. I mean, I think considering that this person does become the city manager whenever the city manager is gone, I think the BOC is gonna wanna say in this selection process. I don't think it's something that just the city manager alone should be able to appoint. I think he needs
Well, he can.
a
It's-
say
No,
in
it
it.
doesn't.
subject to the
That's
approval.
Subject to the approval of the Board of Commissioners.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I made sure of that. I agree with you 100%. Same reasoning. You can't have somebody in there that isn't been approved by the Board of Commissioners. I just don't want the board to have to go through the whole selection process
Where do you-
themselves. You're supposed to bring in a qualified candidate, and it says, the next section says, shall be appointed solely on the basis of their executive and administrative qualifications. So if they don't have those qualifications, then they can't be appointed.
Or should,
And where were you anticipating this goes? Along with where we were?
We were discussing putting it in 16.
So it would be called city manager, assistant city manager?
It would be called assistant city manager. It would be probably, let's see, 16 reads one. See where it says acting city manager?
right.
Yes.
I would recommend we remove that completely. And okay, so here's your two choices, because this is why I looked at it. So we have an acting city manager provision. So either we make this number 3, or we strike 2 completely, which I'd prefer to do, and then you could just remove the last sentence of this one. So the way I wrote this is if you left 2 in, I made the assistant city manager shall serve as the acting city manager. You could leave that in, and we'll just put a number 3, which says assistant city manager.
If you look at section 17, that's how they have the clerk one as well, the deputy clerk. We put it as B, that's.
Oh, the same way?
Which one is that?
17B.
I'm just saying if you want the language to be kind of consistent.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't the assistant city manager have more weight than the acting city manager?
Well, yes, in my opinion. We don't, if we have an assistant city manager, well, let's just say something happens to the assistant city manager and the city manager.
Right.
Somebody has to be appointed as acting city manager.
Right, so that would be the
So that
next
would
level
be-
down.
Yeah.
Right,
So we could make this 2 and that 3.
right, that's what I was, yeah.
So Andy, what about, is there a time?
That's the problem, what you do. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. How do we put that in?
Well, you could say that,
I was thinking about
absent-
that.
During the city manager's absence of greater than 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, some.
We could say that, or we could say prolonged, but
That's subjective.
right. So I was looking at that, and I was trying to figure that one out myself.
Because,
I knew that was a glaring issue.
yeah, city manager's absence.
He goes to lunch
From
in,
the city greater than.
Yeah, he goes to
greater-
lunch
Greater than
in
48 hours?
Safety Harbor, and.
Yeah, no, that's what I was.
And I'm
worried
in
about.
charge now.
We get a crazy assistant city manager and said,
We're
well,
gonna change everything for the next
you're fired,
hour.
you're fired, you're fired.
No, we could do 24, 48. That was something I thought you guys would discuss.
So, what do you
We're
think?
still on 16, right?
Yeah, Jimmy, we're on the language, what
Yeah.
Andy and I are talking about. It says that during the city manager's absence from the city greater than 24 hours, 48 hours, 70, I mean,
Which thing are you in?
on this
John?
memorandum that he
Oh,
wrote
okay.
on the assistant city manager.
I'm with you, go ahead.
Well, I mean, there needs to be a time frame so that, you know, the guy can't, I mean, what if he, like Andy said, he goes to lunch and the assistant city manager goes crazy? I mean, so like 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever you're, feel comfortable with. John?
I mean, the language we have under 17B is during any temporary absence or disability. But we don't define temporary absence, which could be an hour.
We could put something in there maybe that says the Board of Commissioners would not appoint, but allow that to happen. If the city manager's in an accident and he can't come to work,
I'm just concerned that, so the city manager goes on,
I want it to be automatic. I
Right.
want him to just, I want the assistant city manager, the city manager says, look, I'm leaving town to go to a conference in Nevada, you're, without any other action, he becomes
Right.
city manager. So I'm just saying, for.
because
his
he could do
absence is
that now
greater-
under the acting.
The greater than 24 hours, if he's gone for more than 24 hours or 48 hours, something, then the assistant kicks in.
well, he kicks in anytime, I believe. I mean, if the city manager's gonna be gone for 3 days and something happens, it automatically kicks him in because the city manager can't come back.
I
What
would
about-
think you need to have a minimum, like 24 hours. If you're gone for
24
Well,
hours
what if
sounds
you
good.
put in a clause, something like, you know, the acting city manager would be, you know, like if designated by,
Let's look back at that language for a second.
you know,
I'm okay with what Andy wrote. I just want to add the city manager's absence from the city for a period of greater than 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever number you want, just so that it's defined. That that's when it kicks in, not that he goes to lunch and,
You know, he could be sick and the next day something needs addressing, you know.
You know,
so-
because here's the problem with the acting city manager language. The city manager shall designate in writing, subject to approval of the Board of Commissioners, a qualified city administrative officer to exercise the power. So, under the scenario we were talking about, the city manager's sick or gets into a car accident or an accident, is disabled, how does he designate in writing the acting city manager?
see, I think it should be automatic.
I agree with the automatic, but I don't know how you write it automatic.
Well, by
Oh, I
saying-
wrote it, so it is
It-
automatic.
The way Mr. Salzman wrote it, it is automatic.
I think,
The automatic when, though? So the automatic would be the city manager's absence from the city for a period of greater than 24 hours. Or 48 hours, I don't care.
I'd say 24, something could come up anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah, they,
24 going once?
What do you think?
Yeah.
Twice?
I was just gonna say that because there was no assistant city manager, that language was placed in there as the acting, so he could have, he had, like currently, there's 3 people in place by succession. If one is not available, then it went to the next one, and that was board approved. But I think if you have an assistant city manager, just my opinion, like I have a deputy city clerk, I don't have a time frame. If I'm not in the office and she has to take care of something, she acts on my
automatic.
behalf automatically.
This is
Right.
this
So I
is
think with
different.
the assistant city manager,
This is different, Irene.
different?
I mean, that's how I wrote it, exactly
No,
how
no,
you're
I
talking
understand.
about.
That's what
So,
I'm saying. The
I-
way you wrote it, I think is good. I think the acting, I don't,
No,
if you have an assistant city manager, when does the, if the assistant is not available, I mean, when does the acting city manager take place? So I don't know if
That's
you.
what
Yeah,
we're-
they'd have to
that-
both
that's
be
what
missing.
we're saying, 24 hours. If he's gone, 24 hours.
What do you think? Do you think, I mean, what is your opinion and what do other cities
I don't know, you hire, well, few cities, and so I looked at a lot of charters, have this in the charter. They have the ability to have, usually, it's like Irene said. So you, at the beginning of the year or sometime, if something happens, the city manager brings forth to the commission, these are the people, in my absence, the police chief or the fire chief or the city clerk or the treasurer, whoever, becomes the acting city manager. And if they're not available, this person and this person. That's how I've seen it. Now, you're creating a new position. You're mandating an assistant city manager. So this is a new position. So how does this person, I mean, yes, we understand the city manager will give you the jobs that you're doing. But when does he take over for the city manager? I mean, frankly, it could be when he's just gone from the city. Something comes up while, Mark is at a conference, that's a day conference. That person's in charge. I guess if they go run amok, they won't be the assistant city manager much
Well,
longer.
then, and to keep that from happening, maybe it has to be, I'm trying to keep this in today's atmosphere.
Well, I think what he wrote is good.
It's good. I
If we
agree,
just
John. I
add-
think it's good.
We just add the time frame that when it kicks in.
It should be, that's, my thing is, it should be in 24/7, okay? If somebody comes to the city manager, he should know, I mean, the assistant city manager, he should know, I'll talk to John about it and get right back to you. You're not gonna make them while they're working side by side. That's not his job, unless he's assigned that responsibility. So it's 24/7 in my mind.
Well, yeah, he's the assistant city manager 24/7, Jimmy. But when does he become the city manager? And so that's what I'm saying, is like, the way Andy's written it, it's good. When does it kick in that he's the city manager?
I mean, we could change it to absence from the county.
Well,
I
the
just-
more I'm listening to this, I think there's a certain common sense that comes into it. As Irene said, if, say that she's at a half-day conference down in St. Pete and something comes up, Michelle can deal with it. What happens with the fire chief? Let's say that he decides to go to lunch in Orlando.
If you like
and-
it the way it's written, John, we'll go with it.
I mean,
Yeah,
I think we could live with this.
Yeah, I do too.
I think if we had somebody who couldn't follow this, they wouldn't last.
It
as
wouldn't
the-
last very
right.
long, yeah.
Right, Andy made the point, if they run amok, you just
I mean,
fire
the
them.
commission wouldn't put up with that.
Right.
well,
My-
and
my guts-
administratively, they can define it more thoroughly between the
Right,
city
with the
manager
job
and the
description.
assistant
Right,
city
there
manager.
you go.
Right,
With the
that makes
job
sense,
description, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the charter.
And
Yeah, we go
Any-
back to the more finely we chop up the ingredients in this charter salad, the less likely it is to be approved.
You're right about that.
Yeah, I think we're really trying to put in, here's a new position,
So-
the assistant city manager, they're going to be in this position, and the job description will be created, and obviously approved by the board.
Any good city manager, when he gets an assistant that he's picked, he's gonna assign a bunch of stuff to him to take the load off of him.
Yeah.
And that's gonna work. If that works, it's great. If it doesn't, then he'll probably recommend that he's terminated. But this is no different than being in the general public. That's the way it works. When the number 2 guy comes in, he does most of the work. So he can take over in an emergency.
He could take over, he learns, and you try to groom that person, maybe even for the city manager position in the future.
So Andy, in your mind, we get a new city manager. We know Mark's retiring, right?
Right.
We get a new city manager. Would a new city manager know that he's required to hire an assistant, or it's at his option?
No, this is a requirement.
Okay.
Shall.
Shall appoint.
Any kind of shall is mandatory.
Okay.
That's gonna be, I wanna be
Well, if you
around
guys don't want to
when
put
this
the time
passes.
frame in, then let's, I move we adopt the language for the assistant city manager as written by Mr. Salzman.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a,
Moving right along.
Dueling seconds.
Wait,
here.
I just want to make sure this is clear, that I presented one thing in writing and it was approved. I'm betting 1,000.
Without a change.
listen,
strike
don't
out.
let it go to your head, man. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Should it say in the motion that that wording will be inserted as section 16(2)?
We're not really through with that section.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that part. Well,
Okay.
that's more of us doing that when we
All right.
thing down.
Once we get this,
Final vote to everyone in the
Okay.
section that's written.
what I'm gonna recommend is that, let's get this one done with the vote, and then let's go to 16 and try to finish it,
Okay.
so that we can get this all done at one time.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay, would you call the,
Dr. Bucavalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Chair Colangos?
yes, thank you. I had some notes written all over section 16. And while we're here, let's tackle it. And the first note I had was down on section F,
Yes.
and we were add prioritize improvement programs or something to
Yes,
that.
prioritizing capital improvement program.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Okay. Then,
Prioritizing future capital improvement programs.
Isn't it
I have
prioritized?
prioritizing capital improvements with
It's,
programs deleted.
Yes, because we had this language in F and G, that my notes show.
Let me see. I had, in G, I had, keep the Board of Commissioners fully advised as to the financial condition and future needs of the city to include future needs of the city, to put that in there.
In future needs of the city, I had prioritizing future capital improvement programs.
Okay?
Yeah, I had
Yeah,
program
that-
deleted.
I have that next.
So those are the two sections that I had notes on that you wanted to make changes.
Yeah, I also have those. I have them both that we wrote those in. Do we want to go over this whole section?
I think you went over the whole section, and those were the only changes,
Were the only
however, if you
ones?
want to revisit it.
Right.
That was on May the 20th, because I have a note down here that says, info from attorney about assistant
Right.
manager.
Right, and that, so as far as I knew, there were 3 changes, these 2 that we just discussed, and the one you just voted on. That's all I have notes on.
So you'll put this together for us also?
Yes,
It is,
as long as there's no other changes.
as long as it's what?
No other changes.
Yeah, and when we get it all together, then we can review it again
Yes.
and make sure and vote on it. Yes, that's the way I think we should do it. Well, we've done 2 good things today. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Wait a minute, we've got
So
our,
moved.
yeah, Mike will come back here and we'll be gone.
Yeah, that's Greek time,
That's-
that 35
That's
minutes
sending
he's
a
taking.
message.
That would.
It's Irene's turn.
Yes, ma'am.
Before, if y'all do adjourn, that's fine. I just wanted to check, you still wanted me to do the quick
Actually,
presentation on?
we're going
what
to take
y'all-
a 10-minute break, and when we come back, you have 2 hours and 50 minutes with us.
5 minutes would be adequate.
No, this is crazy. It's the P and Z is the P and Z.
Right.
And the Board of Adjustment is the Board of Adjustment, and leave it alone.
Right, because
You're seriously taking a break?
there's different
No, I
burdens,
understand.
competent, substantial.
I'm not.
evidence
Oh,
versus-
okay.
Quasi judicial.
Right, and I was looking at
Well,
it
you see
going,
what happened? Now we have a committee member has left and nobody's run amok.
And then transfer?
Yeah, but I'll be honest with you, coming back and went through Charlotte,
Oh,
that's
God.
a zoo.
I mean,
That's the
especially
worst,
north
I
of the
think.
river.
Well, I'm taking the direct flight tomorrow, so I was just curious
Yeah,
how it
I
works.
saw that, and I said, wow, I didn't know that. So,
Okay, let's get started again, and we're going to have the city clerk wait to make her presentation.
He wants to straighten out one thing we were
That's,
discussing.
yeah,
that's
we're gonna-
exactly what I was holding off for,
okay.
because we're gonna have to change what we passed.
Just
Well, I make
modify
a
it.
motion
We're gonna
that we-
modify it.
Okay. I make a motion that we modify the agenda to include Renee Vincent.
Okay.
Oh, the agenda
Save
will
that
I don't think you
until
need to
she's
modify
through.
the agenda. but-
Thank
I don't
you,
need him, okay.
No.
thank you for taking the time.
No problem.
I know you were easydropping on our
I was.
conversation in there, so.
It wasn't real time, so I was glad y'all were still here.
Please tell us,
So you were referring to, Mr. Terrapini was referring to the annexation or the old planning area boundaries, which did exist until several years ago, that those planning area boundaries were put in place by, I want to say it was ordinance 0063 years ago with the planning council. And fast forwarding several years, that was actually struck down. So those planning area boundaries, because that was all about controlling annexation, that was struck down. And so those planning area boundaries don't really exist anymore. So I wanted to, that was the map I had, there's like 3 copies I brought up. That was the old planning area boundary. Basically, it was Klosterman North, Anclote Boulevard to the south.
Suppose we
Oh,
gotta
sorry,
modify it.
excuse me.
Planning area decision.
Anclote Boulevard to the north, Klosterman to the south, and the farthest east was George Street, that,
Street,
so
loose out here a little further.
that's what it used to be, however you want. I just didn't want you to describe it as something that doesn't legally exist anymore, so however you go is up to you.
Is there a designation for that?
Not anymore, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would 34689, 34688 be a proper designation?
I would need to look at that. I mean, that's gonna pick up a lot of East Lake.
federal stuff.
Here's a way we can modify it and do the same thing we were talking about, okay? We just say that and we're talking about for those 4 people, remember? That they live north of Klosterman Road, south of the county line, and west of McMullen Booth or East Lake, whatever you want. And that's pretty much the old planning area.
Or even better, even though this may not be adopted, you could actually make reference to correct me if I'm wrong, counsel, make reference to the city, whatever, the 2007 Tarpon Springs Planning Study Area. And that way it incorporates everything, even though it's not. I guess from your perspective, it's not in place, but it's in place if you make reference to it as the exhibit.
You could do that.
So it's in that comes out of the existing comprehensive plan, which is gonna be repealed and replaced here shortly, so it's not in the new comprehensive plan. So that's, again, I think it's a little, I think you're better off to describe it by street boundaries.
All right.
I really
That's
think you're
fine.
better off doing
That's not,
that.
again, that's not a hill I'm going to.
Just so you know, the McMullen Booth line is a little further to the east than what's on this map. But it makes sense to go, I think, to the McMullen Booth Road, and if you live west of McMullen Booth, you're in.
Yep. I don't
Mr.
disagree.
Salzman, can you
Is it McMullen Booth or?
change
East Lake?
what we had talked about earlier and make that change? We're gonna vote on it here in a second, so we'll get that done.
John, is it East Lake or
But it's
McMullen
this,
Booth?
one side's East Lake, one side's McMullen Booth, I think, Joan. It's the same road.
Right.
But it's probably got a county.
Well, it's 680, isn't
it's
it?
got- it's
Yeah,
got a
there's the street
designation
number,
of-
or, yes,
Yeah,
county
why
road
don't we use
number.
that? If the
We can do
road
that.
changes names, okay.
So do y'all need me anymore? I'll just.
Thanks,
Go
Renee.
back to listening.
Thank
in,
you.
will you?
Appreciate it.
So,
Thank you. We appreciate it.
so
So,
do we need a
One of you
motion to
ladies
change that?
No,
are making
I think we're
a
okay.
motion that we,
I mean, you could do a motion to change it, but
He said
we
he's
have
already-
direction. I mean, you're going to have to vote on the
We're
whole
gonna have to
thing
vote on it again anyway.
So,
But it can't say planning.
no, it's not going to.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay, so that comes out.
Sure, we don't have to change what John
If you
said
feel
and vote
comfortable
on it?
doing it, you can.
I just don't want somebody to come back who's.
Well, the way I look at it, you're
doing
going to
anything
vote
is
on it,
wrong.
you're going to vote on everything as
As we
either-
finish.
Right,
Okay.
Every section.
every section.
Every
so-
last one.
I remember that. Okay, so we'll move along. We have a presentation by our city clerk.
So basically, it's just a brief presentation, just more research. And I just wanted to make it very clear, no matter what it's changed to, it doesn't, we work with anything. I just wanted to make sure that I gave y'all the information so y'all could have that for your decision. And this does come up, like I said, at just about every charter.
What section is it?
11?
Well, it's kind of, like some things we mentioned, some are under Chapter 11. I just did surrounding municipalities, election costs, the date of election, because those are some of the things y'all have been talking about. I don't know if I can blow that up.
You talking about the date of the election?
Yes. So. So I did the surrounding areas. I did Clearwater, Dunedin, Largo, Oldsmar, Pinellas Park, Safety Harbor, and Tarpon. So I did the qualifying days. So across the board, Clearwater has 11 qualifying days, Dunedin has 14, Largo has 15, Oldsmar has 30, Pinellas Park has 15, Safety Harbor has 11, and we had the 8. So there's not whatever y'all decide on that. The fees and petition cards, y'all discuss that. Tarpon has a $25 qualifying fee and 25 cards. Clearwater has a $100 qualifying fee and 250 cards. Dunedin does $150 and 1% of their annual salary, which is 1% of the annual salary, or no fee and 1% of the registered voters, whatever their last registered voters are. Largo has 200 cards, no fee. Oldsmar has a $25 fee and 150 cards. Pinellas Park has 200 cards or $50 fee and 40 cards. Safety Harbor, if you're a mayor, it's $65 qualifying fee. If you're a commissioner, it's $40 qualifying fee and 100 cards. The election dates, out of all these are all March except Dunedin and Largo. Most of them have, except Tarpon, Safety Harbor, and Largo Oldsmar, Safety Harbor, and Tarpon have 3-year terms. Clearwater, Dunedin, Largo have 4-year terms. And Pinellas Park was a little different. They have 2 years if you're a mayor and 4 years if you're a commissioner. The sitting out period, I know I've sent that to everyone that y'all will be discussing eventually, that former Vice Mayor Lunt requested. Clearwater has a 2-year sitting out period. Dunedin has a year. Tarpon has a year. Largo, Pinellas Park, and Safety Harbor, they have no sitting out period because they don't have term limits. They have terms but no term limits. And then Oldsmar had a you cannot serve again after you serve 2 consecutive terms at all. And then we talked about initiative and referendum signatures, just so y'all could see the average. Clearwater has 10% of the last registered voters. Dunedin is 15%. Largo is 5. Oldsmar is 20. Pinellas Park was 10. Safety Harbor was 10. Tarpon was 15, but y'all were looking at 5, which y'all voted on. And then I just pulled a few of the last elections that we had for the last 10 years. The ones in yellow are ones that we piggybacked with. And you see the cost difference. As you can see, our last November election, even though there was another city originally having an election, it wasn't, you get a discount in mailing, but you don't get a discount in the regular election. So it cost us a full-blown election. And we had, at that time, our last registered voters were 20,847. And then we discussed about the difference in November versus March elections. In November, there's definitely cost savings. There is an increased voter turnout, and those happen every 2 to 4 years. Some of the cons would be the placement on the ballot is lower, depending on what type of election it is. The change of terms would have to go to even years, whether you went to 2 or 4 years, because that's when every 2 to 4 years, or every 2 years, there's an election you could tack on to. Political signs are integrated with other elections, such as for school board, county judges, and those such things. And you do get a higher voter turnout, but it doesn't mean that they vote the Tarpon items. With the March, it's a standalone. Tarpon's the only thing on the ballot. Political signs are not integrated with other elections, but it is at a higher cost. So they both have good and, and bad. And that was all basically just to give you some other comparisons, see what's.
Thank you for this.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thanks.
Oh, and can I add one more thing? I just wanted to say about the mailer as well. I didn't get included because I didn't get the information until afterwards. And there again, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just bringing back information. The average mailer for whether it's a postcard or, and then it could go up, is about 68 cents a postcard. Or it could be more depending on the size of the postcard. I checked with the cities in Pinellas County and also the supervisor elections if they did one, for qualifying. And like I said, we could always do stuff better. So that's not I'm just giving y'all a cost comparison. And they do not do one for qualifying. However, if we take about 20,000 voters, and if we just say, it'd probably be a little less, because not everybody just has 2 per household. But if we do 1 per household, and let's say we do 10,000, it could range anywhere from, let's say on the cheaper side, about $6,800 and above or up. If y'all do one, I just wanted to point out, if we have a poll place change, we are required to do one per household. And that requirement cannot be done more than 14 days prior to the election. So my only concern, price-wise, but there again, it's up to you, is if we had a candidate election that also had a referendum on property and also had a poll place change, you would be looking at 3 mailers depending on how y'all wanted to send those out. If you did one 30 days prior to the qualifying, and then you did one for a property purchase, and then all in one election. So I just wanted to.
That's great information. Yeah.
I mean, one of the reasons, because one of our discussion was getting more participation, and my argument was November generally subjects it to more voter participation. But when looking across the board, it seems like 5 out of the 7, I think that was it, 5 out of the 7 municipalities that all show a March election. And that's why
And I think the main reason is because the placement on the ballot. So the municipal stuff when you have a county or federal election, the priority where you're placed on the ballot, like I said, yes, we get a higher turnout, but sometimes they don't like it because you'll see, before in the old days, we used to do the percentage, this is how many voters we got, this is what, and everybody, like, each race was the same percentage. Now, when I do the statistics after an election, I have to do it for every single question because you have overvotes or undervotes. So I think a lot of them kept the March elections, to be honest with you, because of the placement. Like, if we had a candidate, we would be in alpha order after Safety Harbor usually. And then if you had a referendum, that would even be after all the referendums, which would be lower. It's just the placement on the ballot.
Well, Mike, are you still for the November? I'll do anything to increase participation.
Well, my thought, and looking at the data, sometimes you have to look at the data to see whether or not it makes sense. And, where it says that the cost may be higher for March, but if you're not getting any more or less participation, because that was the thing, that was the driving factor, is participation.
Right.
But if you say that in November, the ballots are so long that people sometimes skip the municipal.
I don't think they skip it. It might not just be as high on the thing, but they go to the end.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I would, it's their fault if they don't.
I don't think they.
I was just looking at November as a way to increase participation, but if it's not,
Said from day one, whatever increases participation in elections, candidates, city boards.
but then I asked myself, how much do we want to handhold people, it's a right we have, that unfortunately people don't get to, have the apathy to exercise that right, and before you know it, you lose it. But
think they're
I
waking
would
up.
say even with vote by mail, we had an increase, because if you used to see the turnouts before, when you were getting
do you think,
some major decisions being made by 10% of your residents.
I think the flip side of that coin, though, is that the people who know who the candidates are, who are more involved in their city, and maybe are better able to make a judgment rather than just randomly coloring squares in, are going to come to the election, whether it's in March or November. And I'm not sure but what we get a better result in terms of the selections by the people who would go to the trouble to vote in March.
Have any of you served on a board of election? I have. You know how many times people have asked me who or what they should vote for? Most people, no, most people.
I get that all the time. What are you talking about?
No, most people come into the, back in the bad old days when they had voting booths. John, I agree with you about more participation and turnout. But you also have to increase the comprehension of the voter.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't, especially the referendums.
No, I agree with you. I just, if.
And even
I
with
was
the
gonna go-
referendum.
Mike thought it was strongly about it.
I
I
could-
was gonna support him, but my big thing is announcing the election, that it's coming up, and the qualifying time, and I really don't care what other towns do. I want a mailer to go announcing the election, 30 business days, there's a difference, 30 business days ahead of time, and I want the qualifying time to be open for 30 days so that people, I mean, we just had Mr. Herbowski say that he was a first-time candidate, maybe, and he had difficulty, he got just under the wire with, no,
Just for correction, he did say that.
he did say it.
He did say that, but we don't, some municipalities require that you can't get your cards until qualifying. We give out the cards once you announce your candidacy. Could be a year, 2 years prior. It's when, and you could bring them back right away and they could be reviewed. In that case, he did not bring them back to 2 days before the end of qualifying. And Pinellas County has other elections as well, so they had to, they have to check the signatures. So they did them in order as they were received. And of course, we didn't even have couldn't get a courier, so my office staff personally took them down to the county. So unfortunately, it wasn't that it met the wire in that
So
case. It
for-
was that
For
it
whatever
was.
reason, I just think 7 or 8 days is too short, especially if you have an election where there's 2 or 3 seats and 2 or 3 candidates on each seat. I mean, for 7, you're going to qualify everybody in 7 or 8 days?
Yeah,
I just,
I agree
I
with that
mean, you guys can go
wholeheartedly.
with me or not, but I think we should send a mailer announcing the election 30 business days ahead of time, so that people go, oh, wow, you know, and then 30 days to qualify.
Yeah, it's like the Army. Tell them what you're gonna tell them, tell them what you told them.
Right? So,
I have no problem with that either.
Yeah, no, I think it's good, and
Yeah.
and by what I said a minute ago, I don't mean that we shouldn't want people to participate.
No,
I
I
mean,
know.
I want people to participate, but I'd rather work to get people to participate.
You don't want somebody throwing a dart at the ballot just because where it lands, that's what I'm voting
yeah,
for.
well,
Yeah.
well, this is for whatever, you know, whether it's March or November.
Yeah.
This is,
I think I'm convinced to leave it in March.
okay, so we're gonna leave it in March, but I would move that we put in there that we send a direct mailer 30 business days ahead of the qualifying time, and the qualifying time be changed to 30-day, an open 30-day qualifying period.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
This is going in section 11.
Yep.
I know it's okay, Mr. Salzman, but I got to mention that we okayed section 11 on the 13th of May. But we have a motion and a second to change the times as written. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Bucavalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenny?
Yes,
Mr. Kaskoudas?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes?
Vice Chair Colon?
Yes.
Okay. Before we move on from this section, did you talk about this, Judy, when I was absent? You know, but ex-Commissioner Lunt sent an email to someone which was forwarded to us that the 1-year wait out should be a period between serving and not just candidacy. Was that ever discussed?
It
Not
was,
to me.
it was mentioned at
Was it?
one of our
Yeah.
meetings.
I'm not for changing it.
It wasn't discussed in detail
Uh-huh.
that I can remember.
It makes sense to me. I mean, I suspect from reading that that was the intent, actually.
Not gonna
I
change.
think we
Irene,
can
do you
only
have
change
that
so much, and I'm
email,
not
or-
for changing it.
Let me see if I can.
It's self-serving.
And I'm gonna tell you why. I think we did talk about it, and I tell you why. Is because the question is if you have a vacant seat
Yeah.
that you want to fill, and you find somebody who's very well qualified to serve that vacant seat, because you want somebody at least with the experience and knowledge, and not just coming in cold because somebody's got their hand up as how I'll fill it. And now they're precluded from continuing to serve on that seat, that they'd have to wait out a year. Is that what we're talking about?
I think it's more of a
think sort of.
technicality.
Sort of, Mike.
Yeah.
What I think former Commissioner Lunt said he wanted to change the one-year sit-out from being a candidate to being to qualifying time. I think it reads now from qualifying time, Irene?
That's what's considered because you actually become a candidate when you qualify, and I'm trying to pull that out. He wanted to remove, I believe, the word candidate, but I think you become, I know what he's trying to say, and it doesn't, like I said,
Maybe I
again, doesn't
mis-
matter
maybe I
to me either
understood the
way. But I don't think
misapplied
it,
the provision then. Because I was thinking, because what there was a discussion is if somebody filled a seat that was left vacant and the person filled that seat,
Yeah,
that they would be precluded from running in the next election for that seat.
They're
That-
not precluded.
yeah, that's a different.
I
thing,
have-
Okay,
believe.
all right, then I'm confusing that then.
I have it. Does anybody want me to read it?
Please.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Section 11, terms of office qualifications, date of annual election. Section C, the term of office for the mayor and commissioner shall be 3 years. No person shall be eligible to hold the office of mayor or commissioner or both for more than 2 consecutive full terms. If any mayor or commissioner be appointed to such office as provided herein, such person may be a candidate for such office for 2 consecutive terms. That's all as written. Therefore, thereafter, such person shall not be a candidate, which was highlighted, for either such office for a period of 1 year. If any mayor or commissioner is elected to complete a portion of a term, such person may only be eligible for such office for 1 consecutive term. So he wants.
Is that the proposed language, or
That's what's there now.
That's what's in there, but
What he is
That's not what I'm reading.
proposing
to remove the
is
word.
that such person shall not be a candidate for either such office for a period of 1 year, be stricken and replaced with such person shall be eligible to hold such office after a break in service of 12 months. And then it leaves a sentence and then goes down to the next. Thereafter, such person shall not be a candidate for either such office for a period of 1 year. Again, that's stricken and changed to such person shall be eligible to hold such office after a break in service of 12 months. And then the next sentence stands, and then I guess this is an addition. Thereafter, such person shall be eligible to hold such office after a break in service of 12 months.
You know
And
what? It's,
It says-
there's only so much we can change, and how often does this really come into effect that we want to mess with it?
no, that's certainly true. But I think that really the intent here was more a matter of service than just being a candidate, you know? I mean, they talk about being a candidate, but I think what they're really talking about is service, you know, shall not serve.
You can't serve without being a candidate.
I understand that.
But in any case, I think it so rarely happens that if the more we put on the thing, the more likely it's all gonna be, no, going down the line. So I
You
think
think
we
we
need to be a
should-
little selective.
Do you think we should prioritize?
No, I don't wanna prioritize anything. I just don't wanna change it.
Let's hear from,
I just wanted to say, originally, we have term limits. If we didn't have term limits, that would be something different. And Attorney Salzman, correct me if I'm wrong, and that also prevents someone who served 2 3-year terms in March from running in the next election, let's say if it was in November, to qualify. In this situation, unfortunately, former Vice Mayor Lunt resigned on December 29th, and you become a candidate when you qualify. And the qualifying for the March election is mid-November. So he was like a month short of being out a year. If he would have qualified, I know everything with the Form 6 and stuff, but usually if someone, that's the same instance as someone is, they're serving in their second year as a commissioner, and they know that the mayor's race is coming up. I notify them too and say, if you have any interest in, and you have to be out a year, you must resign 10 days prior to the date of the first day of qualifying, because that's the election law. So they would, so we've had people that have had to resign, and they could still stay in, they're finishing their term,
See,
but it's, after the election's over, they would, if they didn't win, then they would have to, they would have to, it's when they or their successor takes office. So, I know it's a little,
Irene,
if I said that right.
how long have you been in the city clerk's office?
I've been here going on 36 years.
How many times have you had an issue with this? Once or twice?
This is the first time that probably that we've had to say no because it was shy short. I mean,
Rest my
usually,
case.
like I said, I notify, and if that's the case, it's prior to qualifying, and they know they have to resign prior to qual. It's just the situation that happened, this was a little different.
It's unfortunate that it happened to him. My gut's telling me is that I feel sorry for him because it happened, but he made a choice, and we can't turn the world for one person, for one problem, and that's not what the charter's about.
Right.
And it doesn't solve his problem
No.
at this
Right.
point anyway.
No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and my only concern, like I said, that I know what the intent was, but you become a candidate once you qualify. So how we remove the word candidate when you become a candidate, when you qualify, that I don't know, I'm not the attorney,
He,
how that would work.
he did a great job when he was in office.
Yeah.
And
good.
nobody's saying he wasn't a good commissioner. It's just that that's not what we do in the charter.
No, I don't think this is entirely a personal thing. I mean, I think it came out of a personal thing, but I think it's also pointing out a deficiency in the charter when I think the intent was a certain time break between terms of service, not just candidacy, but terms of service. But I do see what you mean in those other positions too. Anyway.
I'm not for changing.
But I also see what you mean. You know, we have a lot of things that are being changed, and there's
It's
only so much people can pay attention to.
Well, at least it was discussed.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you bringing it to us. I know he had contacted you. And believe it or not, I read it again before I came here today, because I liked him. He was a nice guy.
Oh, yeah.
He did a good job, but it's not what we're here for.
Yeah, most laws are passed, if I said this right, retrospectively. You know, you realize that there's a problem and you need to change something based on a circumstance. This could be a circumstance, but this isn't something that I think of all the charter amendments that we have to go through. This is not one I think that's, that's needs to be changed, because it's not something that's, I mean, if it happened often, then I think the next charter review could look at it, but, having this happen once in a blue moon is not something that I think we need to start making changes on.
I agree.
Okay, I'm gonna go forward. We talked about it. We don't have to vote not to do that. Let's just go forward to the next spot. There's a lot of areas in here that, in our list, that we haven't done yet.
Is there a way to go backwards, though? I wasn't here last week, and I did get a chance to watch some of the
List
You think we should make an exception for that one person?
I think you should.
Tell him to watch.
Sorry.
Tell him to
Did
watch
we
the
already
tape, Kevin.
pass it? Is that it? Did we already pass it?
Yeah, y'all, last week y'all talked about the Civil Service Board.
We didn't do anything on it, I don't think.
Okay,
No, we didn't.
no, because I started to watch part of it, and then I had bad
Nothing
reception.
was changed into that, I
Yeah,
think.
no, we haven't done anything.
I'm inclined to keep it myself.
I don't think we have any choice but to keep it.
I thought we were going to look at having, instead of the Civil Service Board, that the city, that there's a current
Mechanism?
mechanism in place?
You need to look at the tape, Mike.
Okay.
Because the city does have an internal appeal service, but
Yeah.
you're appealing to the people who got rid of you.
I understand that.
And the appeal
But-
beyond that
but-
is still,
But here's my reasoning, is I don't care if you do it internally, I don't care if you go through Civil Service Board, the aggrieved party, if they don't feel that they've gotten a fair shake, it's going to litigate. And having a provision in the charter that has something that really doesn't have any teeth, if you have a Civil Service Board and a person's recourse is not beyond the Civil Service Board, that's one thing. But if they have other avenues of getting what they feel is their just reward, or whatever you want to call it, or feel vindicated, there is the civil process, and nothing you could put in the charter so you've got a provision in there that really has no teeth.
Mike, their personnel rules
Uh-huh.
has a provision of all kinds of things. It has a provision for, you should watch the tape. She was a pretty good witness. They have structured infractions, like 1 through 5, and they're pointed, and how many points you get creates the discipline. But they also have an appeals committee in the city.
So why not adopt that as part of the charter?
Well, it's in the personnel rules. You don't need to put it in the charter. They have it already.
Yeah, but you have a section in the charter for Civil Service Board.
I think,
So,
I
and that's
think-
why, I think Mr. Salzman said, I don't want to put words in his mouth, he said either get rid of it, keep it, but if you keep it, then fill the positions on the board. And I don't know, after I listened to the lady, I was in favor of keeping it and filling it.
the Human Services Director came in and spoke to us about it. I think she said she'd been here 12 years.
Quite a while.
She had 4 cases in 12 years.
For
24
Civil Service
years.
Board.
So for
Yeah,
the
more than 12.
Jimmy,
And-
24 years.
24 years,
Yeah.
okay.
So-
So it's not a problem, but she had utilized the Civil Service Board on 4 cases.
We just discussed.
Last one was in 2010.
We just discussed the qualifying or whatever, and in 30-something years, this may have only happened once, okay? And we decided, it's not worth changing the charter over. But that's why I'm saying you have a provision in here, and I'm not going to die on this word, but we have a provision in here. We have a provision in here that basically may have been utilized, like you said, 4 times in the 24 years. And so why do we need it if the person actually has alternative, if you want to adopt that the city shall provide, a form for which, or a mechanism for an employee to, what did they call it?
Appeals process?
Appeals process within the city, that gives that employee an avenue, and they still have other avenues without having to go through a Civil Service Board.
They do. They're-
Right, so why have it?
They're given one when they're hired as employees, they go through a short class, they get a written thing that tells them, this is what's going to happen during your
Yeah,
disciplinary.
but why have a Civil Service Board is my question. What does it accomplish?
Jimmy.
It keeps the
out of
union
anybody,
out.
you have the most experience with the city on that. What's your take on it? To keep it or not keep it?
It doesn't cost us anything. In the 4 cases she heard that the city won, those employees could have brought an attorney to the Civil Service Board. It's not like they don't have the right to have an attorney represent them. So I like it because it's the best methodology for the city as a whole, that they're taking care of the problems, and they're not having that many problems based upon what she gave us with her statistics. the communications are pretty good with the employees and their managers and supervisors. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So I would ask her the question, the fact that you had a civil service board, how many times have employees didn't go through the civil service process and actually filed suit or filed a claim, whether it's EEOC or whatever, against the city? That's what the answer of that would tell you whether or not a civil service board has any mechanism or benefit to being in the charter. Because if they're bypassing the civil service board and going direct to filing claims,
But they can't. They have to exhaust their administrative remedies.
which you already have one.
So either the civil service board or the grievance process, right?
Correct. So you it doesn't say you have to go through both.
No,
So you go through the internal one.
right,
and
which
then
is what they have
And
to
then you
do.
file suit,
Right.
is what I'm saying, Jim. I'm
It
just, I'm
it
saying,
hasn't happened based upon what she's told us. My experience is most of the people that work here like working here. That can be the only reason her statistics are so low on problems.
That's liable to, subject to change with a new city manager.
So, I'm just saying you've got a provision in here. Again, it doesn't matter, but I'm just trying to clean up this document and to have sections in here that are just, have no, that are ignored, and then why have it?
Problem.
Then why have it?
I mean, well, there is a solution. There's two solutions. One is to take it out, and two is to put the board in place. So here's what I'm thinking, Mike.
I'm not saying take it out. I'm saying that provision, that lack of having a civil service board, that makes reference that they have to go through the grievance process.
Well, that's taking the civil service out.
Right.
So that's two solutions. Either you take it out or you leave it in. If I were an employee in the city and I got dismissed or written up or something, would I feel better about applying to the grievance board, or would I feel better about going to an independent civil service board? I think it's a psychological thing. I would go to the civil service board.
So let me ask counsel a question, who does employment law. To the extent somebody goes, that they feel they have to go through a civil service board, and they prevail, what's the likelihood of them staying on that job? Not much, because if their employer is looking to get rid of them, and they go through a civil service process, and the civil service board agrees with them, they're working at a place they're unwanted, and probably feel unwanted, and they're going to be moving on regardless.
Well, it depends on really the agency, because I think you probably know the sheriff's office, for example. The sheriff will terminate everybody and let the civil service board put them back. If that's just how he deals with it. If there's a violation that, he allows that entity to deal with it. I have seen the opposite, exactly what you said, which is, yeah, I've gone before the civil service board and I've been employed, and then what? Do I stay?
Or start looking for another job.
I've seen it with a grievance,
Yeah.
where it goes to arbitration, and the arbitrator puts somebody back to work. A lot of times they'll say, okay, I'll stay at work. Depends on the position, if you're a union, non-union, it's all thrown in there.
My experience in human resources with the telephone company is if they get a chance to come back, they come in and try to work.
Yeah. I would-
If they don't, they're looking for money. Then they hire an attorney and then they try to sue the company and whatever. But that's not what this group is. I'm convinced she does a hell of a job.
Well, I would, if we had a manned civil service board and the civil service board was utilized, no problem. But when we have,
You don't use it.
we have a section in here that's not utilized, and if either you utilize it or you don't utilize it. If you're not utilizing it, then there's
I
no,
wouldn't have a problem with going through the city manager to tell her, you need to get a civil service board. You know, you're gonna have 6, 7 people on that board, whatever it is, just let them know. We'll call you when we need you, but you are a member of that board. These are our guidelines, these are our regulations they have to follow. So if you're called, you're ready to go. There's nothing, it should be that way, I agree with you, but
Well, and I got
So where are
the,
you falling on it? You got two choices. Where are you falling on it?
what am I falling on? I like it the way it is.
That's the way it is.
All right, but if that's the only thing that keeps the civil service board going in the city, because I think it works in this city, because she's used 4 times in 24 years, guys, something's working right.
Well, it's because you have progressive discipline policy.
That's right.
And you have specific violations. And normally when somebody sees that, what is their biggest argument? Their argument is one of two things. Either one, I don't fall under that particular number, or two, you know, the punishment is too harsh, right? Especially when there's an opportunity to use different levels. That's the only concern. But normally, progressive discipline is what you want to have. It's fair to everybody.
Yep.
You know, you got your first warning, you get your written warning, then you have your suspension, and then you have your termination. So you know you have to do things a few times before you're going to be in that position. That's usually employees like that. That's what they want to see. They don't want to see the knee-jerk, oh, okay, I did this and I'm automatically fired.
I'm very familiar with that. That's,
Yeah, well, she said the last time it was convened was 2010.
Right.
That's 14 years ago?
So during our last discussion, didn't we talk about suggesting that they do man it and?
That was one of the suggestions, but
Yeah.
you ultimately have kept it open and to decide what you want to do, whether you want to keep it, get rid of it, slim it down, were the 3 choices that were mentioned in here. I don't really see slimming down as,
And I've got a question, probably for you, you know. So, as you said, basically, in the 4 times it's met, they've all agreed with the city about dismissal or whatever. Let's say somebody goes to the board and they find in their favor. Now, would that make a difference to an employee in terms of their compensation? I mean, either go, you know, instead of, if they were dismissed, would I don't know, whatever be, would there be some kind of financial negative consequences of that as compared to if the board found in their favor?
absolutely. If the board finds in their favor, they're reinstated, they're made whole.
Okay.
So, you know, you get your job back, assuming you're at that point. It could
Yes.
be something, but it's termination, and then you get your job back and you're made whole. So everything that was
Yeah.
owed to you, you get in a lump sum.
So that's another reason employees may like this system, want to continue this
But a
system.
grievance with an arbitration is the same thing.
Same thing.
The arbitrator, I mean, I've seen cases where somebody was out of work for over a year, the arbitrator reinstated them. They had to get a check for a year's salary, they had to get their pension benefits, they had to get, you know, everything else, insurance. It was a huge check.
But Andy, an arbitrator is an outside,
Yes.
so that somebody's paying for that.
Usually both sides split it.
Split it.
Can I pretend I'm Carrie for a minute? Is this something that, the whole question of the Civil Service Board, should that be in the charter, or does it go back to process again?
It's in the
Is it something
charter.
that should be in an HR manual?
Usually see it in the charter.
Yeah, it's always in the charter.
it's always been in the
Okay.
charter. It's the only way, when it was put in the charter, that the employees were guaranteed representation.
I mean, if,
I'm sorry. Process before that.
Okay.
if the process was that the employee had to utilize the appeals process within the city first, and then was able to appeal that to a civil service board, you would need a civil service board. The only, I mean, where that would benefit, believe it or not, the city, is if the civil service board found in favor of the city, it makes it that much more difficult to argue in front of a hearing master, because most of this stuff is done by hearing master, not by jury, on employment. It would be that, look, you went through that, you went through the civil service, and they've both found you to be, whatever violations that you have, it makes it more difficult for them to overcome. But the fact that you've got a board that's, like you said, and you said it wasn't used for 14, the last one was 14 years ago. You could say that all the employees are happy, but they're not all happy. They just may not have gone through a civil service board.
Usually if somebody files a grievance and goes through that process, they really don't have the appetite to go through another process like that, because
So it's
usually one or the other.
I don't want to litigate redundancy, and so.
There's
Well,
something
I got-
else, there's something else we need to remember here. The Civil Service Board is an additional way for them to try to get their jobs back. They've been through the process of the city's disciplinary action before they were terminated, okay? Without the Civil Service Board, what are they gonna do? They gotta go out and hire an attorney. It's just a good thing for the employees, not only for the city, but if we're worried about the employees, this is an avenue that they can use.
Well,
Bring their
I think,
attorney with
here's,
them.
here's the thing too to think about. It's always been there, right? I don't want the employees to think
We're taking away.
we're
taking
trying to
it away.
short them, okay?
Okay, you know what? You're right.
It's always been there, and it hasn't been a problem, honestly.
So
I think
what
she
we should
felt-
just do is make a note that we
recommend
notify the Board of Commissioners they should fulfill the board.
Right.
I think she felt like it was something that had value. She didn't want to take sides, really, I don't think, in talking to us, but she wouldn't say that it just needed to be abandoned or removed. And, having had the cases where it did support what she wanted, even though they were a long time ago, I think she kind of changed my opinion about it a little bit from
Right. I guess-
from
I
hearing
guess-
what she said.
Yeah. I guess where I'm kind of hung up, I agree with all of you, but the fact that, you'd have to actually have a sitting committee appointed and in place that could be convened at X time.
That's just up to the commission to get people that
Yeah.
want to serve on it. I mean, I don't know, the biggest problem, I guess, is people serving on a board that doesn't meet.
Right.
Even if we started, and I know the suggestions were people come in, they're trained, they do this, it's almost akin to being on a grand jury that never meets. So, yes, you're part of the Civil Service Board, and now if we could get people for that, then not a problem. Maybe people may want to be on a board that never meets.
My notes tell me here that we discussed this on June the 3rd.
Yep.
And we left it to eliminate it, slim down, or leave intact.
Sounds like you want to leave it intact.
So
Leave it intact.
Okay.
The
Moving on.
employees wouldn't go back and listen to the tape and hear how much discussion we gave it, and they have these rights and this rights. The only thing you would hear rumbling through the employee ranks is.
took it away.
They took it away from
All
us.
right,
Yeah.
So with that,
So-
I would move we leave it in place.
all right, you sold me, John.
Okay.
I have a
All right, I'll
question,
second it
though,
instead of leaving it
in talking about how difficult it is to get people to man things like that and everything, and we talked about it in the instance of some other boards.
That's my next note.
Where should we possibly exempt that one from the requirements, since it meets so seldom and would have nothing to do with the business encountered by any other boards?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, that's actually,
Yeah.
that was my next.
Let me finish this,
Bullet
and then we'll
point.
go to wherever you guys want to go.
Well, we have a motion and a second currently to leave it as it is.
Okay.
Are
Call.
we ready to call for the
Yep.
vote?
Yeah.
Alice?
Yes.
Mrs. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Kaskudis?
Yes, I got my 20 minutes in.
Yes.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barrera.
Yes.
Okay.
I was just smiling because such members shall serve a term not to exceed 2 years and shall not serve more than 2 consecutive terms.
Oh, boy.
If- It just, nobody, you could serve and never do anything.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yeah, for 4
Right.
years,
In fact,
4
you're-
years, you never.
You could come back and be reappointed.
You know
and
what?
never do
It
the
actually is good on a resume.
We can give them a plaque.
There you go.
Thank you for your service.
And that actually goes to my next bullet point was, and I don't remember if it was discussed last week, but I thought I heard one of about serving on multiple boards.
Was discussed.
And the only thing I would comment on is, and I know there's a lack of people that are applying to get on these boards, even though we encourage them. And
Not good enough.
not good enough. But I don't know why we would preclude somebody who was not in conflict with another board. For example, I'll use Merrill as an example, with his background as P and Z, but also, let's say, Marine Commerce, or, that they're completely on opposite ends. Obviously, you want to be able to broaden the volunteer pool in the city, but it's more harmful to have a board that lacks the volunteer than having a volunteer.
Qualified volunteer.
Qualified volunteer. That was my third bullet
Oh,
point.
sorry.
That's okay. Where it talks about giving preference, not saying, if you don't have, if there's candidates there, you select the candidates. But when you look at the candidates and somebody's got a special skill, they should be given preference in that selection process. So those two things, being able to serve on more than one city board, provided that they are not in conflict with each other, and that the commission shall consider the special skills or the special skills that an applicant to a board possesses in making their selection.
You know what, Mike?
But
This is the hill worth dying on.
it is.
It's just, I just go back to everything I've said from the beginning, is increased participation. The Civil Service Board, I could probably exempt, because I've been convinced it so frequently meets. But if you allow people to start sitting on 2 boards, you just preclude somebody else. It's just, and while we've identified the problem of people coming forward, we haven't talked enough about really who should be talking about the solution is the Board of Commissioners and maybe the city manager. There's a solution out there, and we're not even close to tapping into the solutions to get this. How many people live in town now? 25,000 people, or something, plus or minus. And how many? If you took all the boards, Irene, how many people would you have? 50, at the most, probably.
At least.
Around 50, something like that. So a town of 25,000 people, you don't have 50 people willing to step up. I don't think they've been solicited and encouraged and told what a rewarding experience it can be to help your town and step up to the plate. And I think before we change the charter, I would want to do that. So I don't care about the conflict in boards. You get one board, and one temporary board like this. And if you guys want to throw the civil service in, I'm okay with that.
Okay. So let me ask you a question.
That's
John.
my hill.
Let me ask you a question. So let's say you got a board, and you need 5 people on the board because it has to be an odd number as a general rule. And you only have 4 slots, and there's not one volunteer for that 5th slot. And the only person who may volunteer, and the board has nothing to do with any other board, is a board member who sits on another board. Do you leave that board vacant, that seat vacant, or do you select that person who's willing to serve on that second board?
You make an appeal to the community and get another person.
I agree with you. Or you look for people with professional qualifications who can at least serve.
Both things.
Yeah.
You make that in your public announcement. We need architects, contractors, planners, whatever
What
particular
section, what
board.
section are we talking about?
Yes,
Something he made up, I don't know.
yeah.
It's about boards, Jimmy. It's-
Boards, don't we have a section on boards?
I agree with you, John. I mean, it really is a greater need to solicit greater public participation. And the idea of having the same people on different boards is like, to me, it just feels like there's a lot of power that goes along with
Is that an ordinance or is that
some
a?
of these boards.
Yeah,
And
yeah, right, it creates a-
non-elected people serving on multiple boards, I think, could potentially lead
Yeah.
to some abuse of power.
I think what we're
clearly it
talking
does
about
that.
is that we should start off in a meeting on this subject so we can stay on it for the length of the meeting if necessary. We're just gonna do this all
I'm
over.
just
You're
going
the-
back on stuff that was
You're
discussed
the
last
ch-
week.
You're the chairman today.
So,
Mike's gotta stay here an extra 35 minutes that he missed, but we can leave.
We
you
can
know.
leave, okay.
I would rather not go into too much detail.
All right.
Because, I think it's very important what you're talking about, and I've heard,
Well, there's some Attorney General opinions on it that I'm kind of looking at, so I want to make sure before we go too much in detail that it's even something that can be done, because there's some opinions apparently on Board of Adjustments and Planning and Zoning. I just haven't read them yet.
I would like to talk about, if you guys don't mind, ladies and gentlemen, this Tarpon Springs Police Department and Tarpon Springs Fire Department thing.
It's just wordsmithing, I think.
What's the name that we're supposed to be putting on them? Because that should be easy to do.
Why not just leave it police department, fire department? Because we're just wordsmithing more to put more things on for people to vote on to change.
I didn't put this in there. That's
I know.
why I'm asking. I don't understand what is this about?
It was about that somebody didn't think it was fleshed out enough to tell you what it was about. But if it says police department, then you just read the paragraph. It's one paragraph. And I think other people feel like also that if you put too many things on the ballot, it's not good.
Well, it's, I knew it had to do with, because the county at one time was looking at to get
Oh, that-
into every city, but what does that got to do with changing our name?
where is that at?
It's 4 and 5.
On here?
Yeah.
I believe that was, Chair Root wanted to move the location of 4 and 5, but then I think it was advised by the attorney, if it
Not
was
to-
rewritten, it would be okay. However,
Oh, I know what it says.
something to that effect.
I-
The attorney suggested not
Preservation, yeah.
changing it because of the change.
I know, I
It was
know.
there under the powers of
Yeah.
limitation or
Yeah.
something like that. She was.
I remember why now. Because if you look at section 4, we call this section Police Department, but when you read the charter, it talks about preserving the police department and has nothing to, and so she just looked at maybe calling the section.
I remember.
Pres-
the discussion,
preservation.
But I'm just.
It doesn't need to be
wondering,
changed.
It's like, how much do you want to?
You don't need, there's things that you don't need to change
Yeah.
because, just for clarification, it kind of.
Or would this need a vote?
I think
I have to say we leave it alone.
just, I don't know that, we don't need to speak to it, do we, in the charter?
Yeah, I don't think you need to take a
Okay.
vote on something you're just leaving.
Yeah.
It's not something you're going to go any further with.
Yeah, it says the Board of Commissioners is prohibited from eliminating or replacing the police fire department or contracting for primary police fire services with another law. It's in here.
Right. I
So-
think her heart was in the right place, Jimmy. She just wanted the heading to be more descriptive of what the actual paragraph said. And I guess what I'm saying is it's just more
Just,
wordsmithing that maybe doesn't matter and
so So are you saying we should leave it Tarpon Springs Police Department, Tarpon Springs Fire Department, period?
I'm saying leave it like it is.
Okay. That's what so, and in her absence, we can do about anything we want. So
We
if
can
you
run
want to make a motion here,
You can run amok, right?
Hey, that's what she told you. She goes, I want you to carry forward.
listen, let's do that. Let's get these things behind us. And if you want to leave early, one of you guys make a motion for it after we do this. I don't care. We can go through here and do every little thing that needs to
Want a
be
motion
done.
that says leave 4 and 5 alone, there it is.
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Bucavalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Kaskudis?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Chair Galanis?
Yes, thank you.
Jimmy, I think Mr. Salzman had something he wanted to bring forward.
Yeah, if you have a chance, I'd like you to look at section 12.
Look how thick my book is getting. Okay.
You were asking this section to be consistent between the Board of Adjustment and Planning and Zoning Board in that one is an advisory board and one is a final board. We didn't go too much into this, but you know, the requirements and the findings are different, right? Board of Adjustment requires competent, substantial evidence. When a appellate board looks at that, whether it's the circuit court, all they look at is, was there competent, substantial evidence to base their decision? They don't care if it was for or against. They just want to know that there's competent, substantial information that was presented versus a legislative matter, which is planning and zoning, that's more quasi-judicial. It's handled differently. There's different standards. What I have seen almost everywhere is that planning and zoning is an advisory board, because you can't take away that legislative powers from the city commission. Board of Adjustment, on occasion, I have seen as an appeal to the commission, which becomes a very political issue, and everybody that I've dealt with in this situation, they've removed that from their responsibilities and went straight to the circuit court, because really a body of elected officials are not necessarily the individuals you want to make a determination as to whether or not there's competent, substantial evidence. That's a judicial standard for the courts to determine. You're making lay people have to become judges.
In that section, for some reason, I have marked out for special exceptions as
Right.
being deleted.
Right.
Yeah, what was that for, Andy? I had that too, Mike.
Pardon?
I had the same mark.
Yeah. Because we couldn't figure out what special exceptions meant, so,
Yeah, I think that was the reason why.
yeah. But we did it. I think this would be more done internally.
Right.
Was to, we talked about streamlining it, but that would then do with the.
Right, that was discussed internally as
Yeah,
to make a
if you had a
recommendation.
consent agenda, unless the commissioner wanted to pull it out.
Right, and that would be something that the board would determine under their own practices.
One thing that had been mentioned to me and as a possible, because, I mean, the planning commission is kind of split fairly evenly between legislative and quasi-judicial items. Would there be a possibility on whichever one of those that doesn't require the BOC to allow those items to be decided?
You lost me.
Well, Mr. Salzman said that the Board of Adjustment typically is quasi-judicial items only, correct?
Board of Adjustment is findings of competent, substantial
They-
evidence
they-
requirements.
Typically, They all go, Board of Adjustment and Appeals decisions get appealed directly to the circuit court, typically, right? Right. In most communities.
There's the thing that makes me uncomfortable about the way it is right now is the Board of Adjustment decisions are final in dealing with some things like height that we've talked a lot about. And I honestly think those are, in many cases, could be much more critical decisions than some of the small items that P and Z deals with.
But there are criteria that have to be met to establish that competent substantial evidence. Is there a hardship? We just did BOA last week, and I'm trying to think, I think there were 3 cases, and the city's recommendation on all the cases were adopted, including a denial. And so I can only tell you from my experience, I've only handled that board twice here. I've handled hundreds of Board of Adjustment cases. I thought that the board and the city did a great job on those cases. But you can't, that's usually if, as a right to, you know, I understand what you're saying. Those are usually, those almost all go to the circuit court as an appellate body, because it's really a question of whether or not there was established the competent substantial evidence.
Well,
They do variances too, Merle.
Well, and all the well, that's what I'm talking about, is like a height variance is potentially much more damaging than, you know, a zoning change just to bring something in compliance with what it already really is, and things like that sometimes are.
But zoning, the Planning and Zoning Board is an advisory board to the Commission on Legislative Authority. Yes, no?
Yes.
So the commission can't unjustly delegate
Yes.
legislative authority.
Well, some of the items are legislative, some of them are quasi-judicial.
Well,
And the quasi-judicial ones fall into the same category, I believe, as what the Board of Adjustment is doing, do they not?
I'm trying to think what you all have heard recently that's quasi-judicial.
About half the items we hear are quasi-judicial.
Basically, it's just having 2 quasi-judicial hearings, because when they go in front of ours is quasi-judicial, and then when they go in front of the commission, it's quasi-judicial.
Right. It's just putting the applicants through a lot sometimes for very, very small things sometimes. I mean, I understand there's some big things that they definitely need to hear.
That's why that suggestion of putting them on a consent.
And I think that deals with most of it, honestly. But
And if I'm a commissioner, I'm gonna get home an hour earlier
yeah,
on Tuesday nights.
the bar.
Yeah, get to the bar before,
before it closes.
Trying to look at your latest agenda.
Are we still talking about section 12, or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see.
You could come back to it if you want.
Yeah, I mean, we can. I'm just trying to see what the last, so. Well, on June 17th, there was just one item, ordinance 2024-03, review and recommendation for approval and transmittal That was the comprehensive
That was the
plan.
comp plan,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's all you did that. In fact, I don't even think we had anybody, an attorney, attend that one.
No, there wasn't anybody there.
Right.
My thing was, I just don't think appointed boards should be on zoning, on land use and zoning, I don't think they should be, no offense to you, the final arbiter. I think that appointed boards should make a recommendation, that appointed board should make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, who are the elected officials, and they're the final arbiter on zoning and planning, zoning issues.
Well,
land
and
use.
my point in there's a disconnect between that and the Board of Adjustment, though, because the Board of Adjustment is the final arbiter.
Right. Yeah, I get that point.
I mean,
Well, they're
that's
just-
all I'm saying there.
They're just different, they're different boards, they're different
Different
requirements.
responsibilities, yeah.
Right. Oh, let's see, plan approval for property, preliminary review and discussion of land development code. So you did the land, this is back in April, sorry. You had a site plan approval, and the other one was just a discussion item. I don't know, I've just never seen it like this, I can only tell you that. I mean, ultimately, I'll draft whatever you say. I've never seen them equal,
I'm okay like it is myself, but
Well, and I think what Mike was talking about addresses a lot of it. It at least
yeah, that is
helps,
different.
allow the board to streamline the process.
I think that it's got some merit as long as the commissioner can pull it off.
Yeah,
Right.
just like where they could do a consent agenda on their expenses.
Yeah, I think that's,
Any commissioner could pull that item off and have discussion.
As long as it's not well, it's still being approved by the board, so it's not a.
right,
a-
no, that
adjust-
accomplishes
yeah.
what you, I think what you guys are
It's
talking
it's
about.
pretty close.
Yeah,
Maybe
and-
like 9 out of 10 cases it would work.
Yeah, and in Little Rock, which is the other jurisdiction I'm most familiar with, that's basically what they did. The cases went to the consent agenda, and then they got pulled if anybody had a problem with them.
But I've heard your frustration at other places where people go, well, what are we doing? You know, we recommend, sometimes there are commissions that just ignore what, and then you're like, well, what did we just spend all that time doing? And they're not even listening to our recommendations or hearing what we had to say. Some of it is what you also mentioned. I get 2 bites at the apple, right? I come before you all, and I see where the errors are in my presentation, and I fix that.
Right.
There may not be anything wrong with that if the idea is that it's property and there are a lot of rights that individuals have when you're dealing with, you know, property. But it is, I've heard those arguments before, and sometimes I've heard people go, I don't even want to be on this board anymore, if you're not going to acknowledge what we're saying.
Yeah.
And then the other side is, I've heard commissions say, well, we want you guys to work out the kinks in this case. So you hear it and you see what the problems are, so these people can, if they have a legitimate zoning issue, that they present everything appropriately.
Well, and the other problem that's come out of that somewhat is the and it's good, the BOC has taken a pretty hard line in recent months or recent couple years on not allowing somebody to change their presentation that comes to us and then goes to them, that it has to be the same presentation, or else they have to come back through us again. So then the poor applicant is doing 3 or 4
They would ignore-
presentations.
They would just do a light tap dance to us and then give a big.
And then they're adding things that you didn't have the opportunity to hear, so how does
How
your
could you vet
opinion?
it? How could you
Right, your
vet it?
opinion doesn't matter, because you didn't hear the same things.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't.
Right,
exactly.
I agree with you. I know the frustration. And some of it is exactly what you said, which is the policies and procedures of the Board of Commissioners needs to deal with that issue versus,
'Cause as a typically, we typically spend more time vetting something, because we don't, that's all we have on the agenda. as opposed to a commission meeting where they gotta,
Right, and that's really what the purpose of the board is that you vet it, you get more down into the details so that really when it comes before the Board of Commissioners, you guys have already gone through everything, and it's like you said, which is much more just pro forma. They've gone through it, if you're recommending approval. Obviously, if you're recommending denial, then it's probably a whole nother hearing.
I think the.
Time for public comments?
Yes.
Oh, it's going to take a long time.
This is going to take a very
Yeah, but
long
then after
time,
those, we
and,
can go.
and
Well, it's one that, you obviously don't have to make a decision. It's just one I wanted to bring back before you, and I can look at some additional information. It's,
I agree with you.
I just get a little nervous when you make these changes in the charter again, because then we're married to them. And what if it isn't exactly the way we think it should be for this one?
I understand the commission has to be the final say. It's just talked about streamlining the process, which has nothing to do with the charter. But obviously, some of the language, just to remove that particular
Right.
couple words.
Yeah, I know we talked about it, and I'm looking at my notes for that.
But we couldn't figure out what it was, and why was it in there if we don't know what it is?
Right.
And it's really not substantive.
Yeah, let me double check that on the statute, because I know we have the requirements under the statute for BOA.
but that's not everything that we've been talking about here for the last 15 minutes.
No, we've been talking about a couple different things. This has to come back to you. But I appreciate the input, so I understand what I'm...
And they're also going to ask about having the final say on some issues, which isn't in here, right?
I think they decided that that's going to be, let the Board of Commissioners have the right to make some policy, rules of procedure, policy decisions without affecting the charter.
Right. But we're going to look at the special exception provision.
So let me ask a question. We have gone through some of the charter stuff when realizing it's really not a charter amendment, but it makes good policy.
Right.
Have we kind of delineated one of, as far as a list of recommendations?
You have not done that yet,
I
which
think
is...
Carrie's keeping a list.
I think
Yeah,
Carrie's keeping it.
and that'll be
I've got
part
that
of
chart.
your
Kind of a guide.
presentation to the commission.
Okay.
Some of it will be, these are the charter changes, and then some of it will be, well, these are not charter changes, these are the suggestions we're making based on our
consider.
review of the charter. Which honestly could be more important than
I
the
think
charter
it is.
changes.
I think some of the. things
Yeah,
that we
because
came
you're
up with are
seeing
problems.
issues that need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
They were
I think we need roll call for that one.
We had a great meeting. I thought we hit some good problems.
Board of Adjustment stuff.
Well, I just get nervous.